Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something completely wild. We're talking about extreme speculative evolution, but with a twist. It's driven entirely by human ideals. Seriously, imagine a future where we don't just, argue about politics or how to live, but where those disagreements literally fracture our DNA. We're going to map out this massive 10,000-year future history where humanity physically splits into two radically different species. One becomes this product of a synthetic, corporate machine, and the other turns into a literal, living, breathing ecosystem. Let's get right into it.
Okay, so to really grasp this 10,000-year timeline, we have to look at a real-world scientific mechanic. It's called gene-culture coevolution. Now, just having an ideal doesn't magically mutate your DNA overnight, right? Instead, what happens is the cultural choices we make end up physically changing our environment. And then that newly engineered environment forces our biology to adapt just to survive it. It's a massive feedback loop. Keep this mechanic in the back of your mind, because it's literally the engine driving this entire evolutionary split we're about to explore.
Section 1. The Great Nutrient Fork.
Every huge evolutionary split needs a catalyst, right? So let's fast forward to the mid-21st century. Between climate change and just devastating topsoil depletion, the global food supply plummets by 60% in a single decade. 60%. Faced with absolute mass starvation, humanity basically panics and fractures down two completely opposite survival paths. On one side, you have the cyberpunk path, the enclosed fix. The mindset here is, nature's broken, so let's abandon it. They seal the cities, synthesize food indoors, and essentially accept corporate feudalism just to get a daily calorie ration. On the flip side, we have the solarpunk path, the open-air reset. Their philosophy? If nature is broken, we have to fix it. So they abandon the cities, head straight into the scorched badlands, and start rebuilding the soil through anarcho-mutualism. Two completely different worlds.
Now, a schism like this doesn't happen overnight. At Generation Zero, it was really just a massive disagreement on how to survive and eat. But by Generation 5, that had turned into radical geographic segregation. One group is hyper-concentrated inside these automated megacities, and the other is totally scattered out in the wild. And because they're completely isolated from each other, they completely stop interbreeding. So zoom ahead to Generation 1000 and beyond, and those selective pressures we talked about earlier, they completely take over. The radically different environments they chose literally hard-code themselves right into their genetic reality.
The crucial moment, the exact point of no return, happened in year 47 of the schism. There's this chilling archival quote from an enforcer named Marcus Vance that really paints the picture. When the corporate cartels finally patented all synthetic food, they locked the massive carbon fiber gates of the megacities just to protect their yields. Boom, the hydraulic locks engaged. Inside those walls, total absolute dependence on the corporate grid. Outside, the outcasts had literally nothing but their ideals. That was the day the door closed for good, and the evolutionary clock officially started ticking.
Section 2. Homo technologicus. All right, let's jump 10,000 years into the future. The biological consequences of living inside these toxic, neon-lit megacities for 100 centuries are absolutely staggering. Meet the cyber lineage. For these descendants, technology isn't just an accessory anymore, it is their actual anatomy. We're talking lungs that have evolved into heavy, fibrous filters just to process the constant smog. Their natural eyesight, completely degraded from living in pitch-black corridors, completely replaced by neurologically integrated ocular implants. But honestly, the most shocking part is what they lost. Because they feed data directly into their brains, their vocal cords have completely atrophied. They don't even speak out loud anymore. They just communicate in these silent, high-bandwidth data bursts. They literally mutated to survive a world that would kill you or me in minutes.
Section 3. Homo verdantis. Meanwhile, way outside those concrete walls, the descendants of the outcasts went down a completely opposite evolutionary path. They engineered their own biology to become the ultimate apex mutualists. Get this, their skin contains modified chloroplasts and hyperdense melanin. It gives them this beautiful iridescent olive tone, and it actually allows for dermal photosynthesis. They literally eat sunlight. On top of that, their lymphatic systems are so incredibly hyper-developed that they can walk through ancient toxic industrial ruins and literally sweat out the heavy metals. They actually leave the environment cleaner just by existing in it. They transform their own bodies into living, breathing ecosystems. It is wild.
And because their biology changed so much, it completely rewrote their culture. A perfect example is something called the Zenphotic. Every single day, right at noon, the entire tribe stops all physical labor, all conversation, everything, for exactly 90 minutes. They lay out on reflective stone terraces, unfurl their arms to get max solar exposure, and their bodies just convert the sunlight directly into cellular energy. Now think about the societal impact of that.
Crime or conflict is basically structurally impossible during this time because the entire population is literally being fed by the sun in a state of shared metabolic euphoria. It's truly incredible.
Section 4. The Eco-Proxy War. So, what happens when these two entirely alienated branches of humanity finally cross paths again? Well, inside those decaying megacities, the corporate elite are getting desperate. Resources are crashing. So when a corporate drone happens to detect this lush solar punk territory, the board immediately flags it as an extraction zone. They covet the purified groundwater. They desperately need the uncorrupted crop strains. But the most horrifying part, they want the solar punk genome itself. They literally want to harvest their tissue to create anti-aging therapies for the corporate bosses. So the cyberpunks launch a strike, but they make one massive fatal miscalculation. They attack right during the Zen photic stillness, mistaking that deep peace for weakness.
The corporate dropships touch down expecting an easy win, but they realize way too late that the solar punks don't even need to carry weapons. Their entire ecosystem is a coordinated defense grid. The literal millisecond a heavy boot crushes a root, an underground fungal alarm goes off. The canopy trees instantly drop these highly corrosive metal-eating spores that immediately clog up the cybernetic filters of the corporate soldiers. Then the solar punks wake up from their solar feeding, completely supercharged with cellular energy, and trigger massive bioelectric fields from engineered groves. It acts like a massive EMP that just fries the automated droids. It is an absolute rout.
After that attack, the solar punks realize they can't just play defense forever. To them, the megacities are basically this cancerous wound on the planet that has to be healed, even by force. But they don't drop bombs. No, they use what's called a biological overwrite. They deploy targeted, incredibly fast-acting biological agents. We're talking giant engineered ferns that shatter hydraulic lines and microscopic mold that just devours automated turret circuits. There's this wild corporate memo from the director of urban security that says they were literally losing their concrete fortresses to a garden. The scent of the indoor blooms was making the security forces too peaceful to even fight. They completely dismantled the synthetic infrastructure from the inside out.
Section 5. The Ultimate Synthesis. So with the megacity walls finally breached, the ultra-wealthy corporate elite just seal themselves down in their subterranean bunkers to eventually die off. Meanwhile, the middle-class urbanites are forced out into the sunlight, and they have to collaborate with the solar punks to survive. But here's where they hit a massive evolutionary brick wall. After 10,000 years of extreme genetic friction, they literally cannot naturally interbreed anymore. The solar punks have symbiotic plant DNA that fundamentally change their chromosomes. Biochemically, the heavy metals and microplastics that are just a normal part of the cyber lineage, the solarpunk commune system treats them as highly toxic biohazards. And mechanically, a lot of the cyberpunk reproductive anatomy had been replaced by lab cloning tech centuries ago. Nature just flat out says, nope, you two cannot merge.
Facing this roadblock, the two groups have to pool everything they know. The solarpunks bring their absolute mastery of biology, and the cyberpunks bring their genius-level mastery of technical data structures. Working side by side in these joint biolabs, they use assisted retroviral gene vectors to basically force a genetic bridge. And in doing so, they deliberately engineer a brand new third species, Homo synthesis.
And guys, there is a profound, incredibly functional beauty to this final generation. They inherit the absolute best survival mechanisms from both extremes, leaving the toxicity behind. They possess this photosynthetic neuromelanin, which means they don't just get physical energy from the sun, they actually process data faster under high UV light. Their cybernetic parts aren't made of cold iron or toxic plastic anymore. They're built from biocompatible hardened cellulose and highly conductive fungal mycelium. They are quite literally the ultimate synthesis of flesh, plant, and machine. A new humanity totally equipped to manage and thrive on a restored planet.
Which brings us all the way back to the present day, and directly to you. We've just mapped out 10,000 years of speculative history where what started as a simple disagreement over food and technology ended up totally rewriting the human genome. It really forces us to take a step back and ask, if our daily choices and our cultural ideals truly have the power to alter the environment and in turn reshape our very DNA, are we already standing at our own great nutrient fork right now? What environment are you choosing to create today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this leaves you with something profound to chew on.